I say, whoa, time out. You're making a $5 million feature, but it's not financed and you don't have distribution. So how are you making the $5 million feature again? Like,
does having a higher budget, let's say over $500,000, guarantee that your movie is probably going to be of a higher caliber story-wise?
if you're a good producer slash director, like a good producer director team who knows how to deploy their resources, very, very effectively, then I would say the more you have to spend, the better quality your movie is likely going to be, as long as you're not wasting it. Like if you're putting it on screen, like if you, let's say, I'll give you an example, okay? Let's say you have a $500,000 movie, right? And then you get an extra $50,000. If you go and hire like a fancy caterer who's going to do the meals, yeah, will your crew and cast feel a little bit better? Sure they will, but will it make your movie better? Probably not. But if you spend that $50,000 potentially on one scene where it's a big production, a bigger location with more extras or something like that, then it'll make your movie better. So that's what I mean by deploying the resources effectively. So you always have to be careful with your resources no matter what you have. So people think at 250, I have to be more careful than at 500. No, you have to be careful at both levels. And at 750, just deploy them as best you can so that you put most of it on screen so that your movie looks better. So obviously, the more you have to spend, if you're deploying it wisely, you have a better chance at making a higher quality looking movie, potentially more production value. Now, obviously, it's going to always end up, there's elements that doesn't matter how much you spend. Acting, all right? Now, you could say the more I spend on actors, the better actors I'm going to get. I don't personally believe that. I believe that there's good actors at every price range, and hopefully you get good performances out of them, all right? So you could say, I'll get a better cinematographer if I spend more money. You'll definitely get a more experienced cinematographer because, that's why they're charging more, because they've done more. And, chances are it's more predictable, but it doesn't mean a brand new cinematographer can't, shoot a great movie. I mean, there's young upcoming people who are really talented who just need a break. So hopefully you get one of those, and directors and all this kind of stuff. Hopefully it all gels, and so that's where the magic can happen at low budgets, where everything gels and you just get great performances, great directing. Sometimes, experience does matter, and you don't make the rookie errors because you've done it before, and that's why spending more money on people who know what they're doing is a little bit more predictable. But it doesn't mean that people who haven't done it before can't do it well. But, to get back to your question, yeah, if you had an extra $250 and you put most of it on screen, your movie's going to look better. It's just going to look bigger, and hopefully, like when I say on screen, you're using more extras, your costumes are better, your production value is better. By the way, if the story's bad, the acting's bad, you could spend $5 million and still come up with a bad movie. I mean, a bad movie is going to be a bad movie. So it does start with a decent story, a decent vision from the director, and good performances. And then the rest is just capturing it properly. Focus, sound, the shots you choose, that kind of stuff.
Earlier you said the audience doesn't care what you paid for your movie. I know film festival audiences might care though, because they just want to know what was your budget range and how can I emulate what you did, kind of.
Everybody lies. I go to tons of festivals. I sit in these screenings and they say, well, how much was your budget? Oh, I'm going to tell you the truth. And then they usually triple it or quadruple it. Nobody wants to say they made a $10,000 movie because it feels too small, right? So how do you know what's real unless you've done the accounting for it? I've been there, done that. I know what things cost. I know, Now, when a filmmaker says to me, hey, I didn't pay anybody, then I say, great, you're lucky that you got people to work for free. I don't do the movies that way. I believe they should get paid, but I'm not saying it's wrong. Sometimes people say, oh, I spent 5 years making my movie because I just shot on weekends or this or that type of thing. And I say, okay, fine. But, again, it's not my business model. I'd rather shoot in 20 days consecutively, get it done, release it, do the next thing. So everybody's got a sort of a different business model and a different vision of what that could be. But when I say people don't care about how much they spend, people like to discuss it. They like to throw numbers around. They like to, because, they want a point of reference for themselves to see, can I make a movie? How much does it really cost? So there are people who are curious, especially at festivals. who want to sort of know, because maybe they're thinking of making their own movies. So they're doing that as a point of reference. But if you've watched a movie and you've left the theater and you said, wow, that's a great movie, and then somebody said to you, oh, that costs $50,000 or $5 million, you'd be way more impressed if it was $50,000, wouldn't you be? Way more. Because all of a sudden, this great movie, this epic movie was made for $50,000. The surprise would be on the low end as opposed to the high end. So I always joke and I say, if I were to ever win an Academy Award, in my speech, I'm going to say what the actual budget was, because it's going to be so much lower than what anybody expected it to be. Because everybody expects if it's a good movie that it has to cost so much money. And by the way, here's the other problem with the narrative that indie filmmaking, everybody throws around Hollywood-style numbers. Oh, I'm making, I told you before, I get phone calls. I'm making a $5 million feature, and it's all ready, but I just need, finance and distribution. I say, whoa, time out. You're making a $5 million feature, but it's not finance and you don't have distribution. So how are you making the $5 million feature again? Like, in your mind, you're making a $5 million feature, but in reality, what you're probably going to spend is $50,000. I mean, that's what's really going to happen if you want this feature made, unless you are connected to some really high net worth individuals who are prepared to make big donations to you. So everybody still throws around the big numbers, especially in the Hollywood circles, and everybody wants to pretend Hollywood, and at festivals, it's Hollywood talk, right? Which is, 2.5, I made my movie for, 3.2 and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, whatever. Doesn't look like you did. So, it's different strokes for different folks.
What does it cost to get bankable stars in your movie?
So bankable stars, you mean A-list talent, basically. People who people say who's in it, and when you say the name, they say, oh, I know that person. That's a bankable star. All right, so that's what I call bankable. Because there are sort of secondary bankable where it's, oh, I've heard of that person, as opposed to, oh, when someone goes to see a movie in the theater, the first question they ask is who's in it. And that's why A-list actors make so much money, because people say, oh, if they're in it, I'll go see the movie, right? They don't say, what's the movie about? They generally say, who's in it? Even for animated films these days, that's the crazy part. Like, I mean, we're talking voice of talent, So what does it cost? It's flexible, but A-list talent costs more than indie film producers can afford. And the other thing is that chances are A-list talent doesn't want to do indie films unless it's their story or they're personally connected and they want to direct. And the reason is because an A-list actor does not want to be associated with a C-list film. Like, the production value is too low and it's going to taint their reputation. I say, unless it's their story and they're very connected to the filmmaker or whatever, and they want to help share that vision. So I'm going to say that, A-list talent, is in the 7-figure range, like, the $1 million plus range. B or say A- list or B+, is going to be high 6 figures. And, when you're making a movie for $500,000 or even $1 million, and you want an A-list actor, then your budget just doubled. You're going to have a $2 million movie. Now, a lot of people will say, I mean, all the distributors who are watching this will say it's worth it, because that's what's going to sell the movie. And they're right. It is worth it if you know for sure you got a sale on the movie. See, if you go that route and you don't get your sale, you've just doubled your budget, you've taken a huge risk, and maybe it's not going to work. But some people say it's a better risk to put an A-list actor in and spend that money. It's less of a risk than it is to not have that. A lot of international distributors will say to you, don't even bother making a movie unless you have recognizable, bankable talent, which I don't totally disagree with. But the genre I work in, family, I don't really use any recognizable talent because I think it's more about the story than it is about the actor. Now, recognizable talent wouldn't hurt, but I don't think the numbers would justify, in terms of the selling side, the cost of the actor.
Now, there's some people that use previous A-list actors who maybe now have become, I don't know what their rating would be, but then there's a draw in that too, that someone that had been out of the limelight for a while, hadn't been working for whatever the reason is, and now has made a comeback, and they may be totally different persona-wise, appearance-wise than they once were, and then that's probably a draw as well.
Very, very big draw. That's very, very common. You know, I call them A- or B+ list actors, people who are not, you know, in the limelight. You know, they're not the top 50 or whatever in Hollywood, but they're still, they've been there, done that, and are very recognizable. Very good for international sales because people still recognize their face or their name. So that's much more common, and it is bankable also, but it's not cheap. You know, a B-list actor could be $50,000 a day. Not uncommon to see that at all. And they're worth it. You know, first of all, they're good actors, right? So you pretty well can depend on them giving a good performance, usually. And yeah, they have that saleability, or what you call the bankability. And you don't know for sure how bankable it is, but you're pretty certain it's better to have them than not to have them. But it's just a finance equation, right? So like if you were to say to me, why don't you put, you know, like 2 B-list actors into lead roles in your movie? And I'm going to say, because it'll double the, you know, be $500,000 in that fee. And I don't think I think I'll only increase my sales by say 350,000. So I'm doing some calculations beforehand and saying it's not feasible for me to do that. But if I did it the other way and said, you know, by putting a $500,000 actor in, I could get, you know, $1 million of extra sales, of course I would do it.